Florida State opens with Georgia Tech to start the 24 season in Dublin, Ireland. Will the Noles run over the Ramblin' Wreck?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith. Thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. You can find this podcast wherever you get them and on YouTube. Part of the awesome Locked On Network, your team each and every day. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Today's show is about Florida State's running game taking on Georgia Tech, because if Georgia Tech's defense does not improve, which I'm about to show you the stats for, they are in a lot of trouble against Florida State. I mean, a lot of trouble. I'm going to break down some of their key players, situations, and play calling, and why Florida State holds an edge. There are a couple of key things that give me some pause in that regard. We'll talk about those as well. But barring something unforeseen, this is a game Florida State should win, because they should be able to take the football and run it right at Georgia Tech. So without further ado, let's talk about some of the key elements here from the offseason, because last year, as you'll see here in a moment when I show the stats, the Ramblin' Wreck just didn't stop the run. They didn't do anything that makes me feel like they're going to this year. They got some key guys back, but is that good or bad? I don't know. We'll have to find out. But the key name isn't a player. It is Tyler Santucci. He's a defensive analyst at Notre Dame. He went with Elko to A&M, goes with Elko from A&M to Duke. Now he's got an opportunity to run his own ship at Georgia Tech, and Elko went back to A&M to be the head coach. He's a pretty good coach, but it's his first time being the guy at a major program, because no offense to Duke, and they had a good defense last year, really good. They were not the hunted. They were the hunter. Duke is not a team that everybody circles on the schedule. You know what I mean? Now he's at Georgia Tech, maybe a little better historically, to say the least, but they're still not great either. I don't know. And it's his first game is going to be against Florida State, a team with a veteran O-line, a really deep running back room, experienced quarterback. This is going to be hard for him. Georgia Tech has two massive guys in the middle I'll talk about in a second, but again, it's one thing to be at Duke, kind of sneak up on some people. They had a good quarterback. They had some veteran players on the O-line. They could play keep away. Their defense was helped in that manner. Georgia Tech can score, but they can't stop anybody. Again, the numbers I'm about to show do not lie. These are all 2023 statistics for Georgia Tech, and they are brutal. They were 123rd. There's only 133 teams last year in the NCAA at the Division I level. Just so you know, they were 123rd in yards allowed defensively. 437.1, horrific. Passing defense, put an asterisk by this. They were 53rd, which is awful. It's not great, but they gave up 215.8. Why did they only give up 215.8? It's due to the next statistic. 221 yards, 0.3, allowed per game. 5.4 yards per rush. Rounding up, it was 5.38, but you get the point. Amongst the teams in the Power 5, now Power 4, Georgia Tech was dead last in rushing defense. Not the stat you want to be number one in, if you know what I mean. Thus, going back to passing, that's why teams didn't throw for as much. They didn't have to. It's 3rd and 6. We can still run the ball. At worst, it's going to be 4th and 1 here. We can make a decision from there. They were awful. Scoring defense, because of their inability to stop the run, and the pass defense wasn't great either, but they were 97th in the country, allowed 29.5 points per game. That's a lot of really bad stats, okay? I have a few other things to put things in perspective here. One of the ways you can look at a team and say good or bad or whatever is just look at the schedule. There's always a couple of teams you're okay. Talent-wise, this is straightforward. Straightforward. That team over there, they don't have as much talent. You should dominate them. If you don't, that's an asterisk by it. There's a problem, red flag, however you want to say it. Check out these two games last year for Georgia Tech. And again, they got their key guys, like their D tackles, which is your prime position to stop the run. They're both back. Get into them in a second. They couldn't stop anybody that was bad. So what do you think they did against good teams? Here's all you need to know. When they're playing against quality teams, it's one thing, but against South Carolina State, they had 42 carries for 196 yards and 2 scores. Okay, that's not even Division I team. Against Bowling Green, 45 carries, 175 yards, 3 scores. That's a MAC team. It's not Power 4. You know what I mean? It's not a good sign. A few other statistics and items to note. If you look at it from a systematic scenario, again, teams didn't have to throw as much on them, but when they did, they could hit big plays, play action. Safeties are coming up. Linebackers have to read run because they just struggle with it. Their poor run defense leads to being down early in the game. You get gassed. Teams get a lead. They can pick and choose when they want to run or pass on first down. That's bad news bears. 2, when your D knows this, they have to take chances. Note that I mentioned, like linebackers shooting gaps, playing downhill, read and run, waggles, bootlegs, any kind of play action, any type of delay action with the tight end or running back in the backfield. Linebacker comes down hard off a play action. They sit there for a second. Linebacker gets lost in the mix. Just out in the flat, tight end, running back, anything basic like that. You can just gash teams with basic plays because you're so worried about stopping the run. The pass is more efficient even when they don't take much risk. Finally, when you get down, what's your offense do? They have to throw more. They have to take more chances. Here's a stat for you. Offensively last year, Georgia Tech had 17 interceptions. That is horrific. Out of the 133 teams, Georgia Tech, 127th in the number of interceptions. They gave up too many points against quality competition, got down, had to take chances. Now, part of that's on their quarterback. I understand. Part of it's probably on their O-line for not pass blocking, etc. But that's still 17 interceptions. Not being able to stop the run just caused so many problems for Georgia Tech. This is a game where, unless Florida State, they got an experienced O-line, we'll talk about that in a second. Unless there's just something out of the gate they're struggling with, that'd be very surprising. I think just about everybody, including Vegas. That's the other stat I'll talk about in a second. Florida State should be able to run the ball here. How they do it, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But here is, just for the fun of it, the Vegas line. And I'm not a gambling guy, but I looked up 2 sports books. One has them at 12.5 favorite, and the other 13. Talking about the Noles being the favorite over Georgia Tech. That's a pretty sizable margin over a team in your conference to start off a season. We're all guessing to a certain degree, no matter how much research I or anybody else does. They're almost favored by 2 touchdowns. There are certainly many other people, if you want your gambling info, I'm not your guy, but these stats don't lie and the situations don't lie. When you can't stop the run, it just impacts the rest of your team. Special teams even, I didn't even get into that, but you're behind the sticks. Even if you get them to punt, they get 2 or 3 first downs. That pushes you back. Your special teams are in a tough spot. So before I go on, just note that unless Florida State lays an egg in this game, they should be able to run the ball. They don't turn it over, they should win. Whether or not you want to get into the whole point spread thing and bet with Vegas, that's on you. Coming up next, we're going to talk a little bit more situationally with Georgia Tech. We're going to talk a little bit about how I would attack their defense based on being able to run the ball, and should be able to kind of pick your poison on what you want to do with passing too. So that's next on Locked On Seminoles. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you are looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need and the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, available only to United States customers. All right. Next up, this is the fun part. It's the basics. Like, we know that they struggle. Talking about Georgia Tech. Who are we attacking? Why? And what are some of the things we'll get into that would enable Florida State to be an effective running team and an offense overall in the opening game against Georgia Tech? So who are the key players up front for them? I looked it up multiple places, and, it is what it is. You can rate this however you want, because there's an old saying about it. Both of their D tackles are back. That's good, right? Well, again, they were 123rd in total defense, and the rush defense was 131st. Their D tackles are massive. I mean massive. One's 330, one's 340. Those are big dudes. But obviously, they don't have much depth. You have guys like that, you got to rotate them. They don't have much depth, and they're not making plays. Bottom line. Ken Santucci, the new defensive coordinator, immediately, obviously this first game, changed some of what they do, some of their packages, some of their blitz looks, some of their stunts. I don't know. That's part of the guessing game with the first ball game of the year for Norvell and his staff, but I think that Florida State should be in pretty good shape. So here are the stats. Zeke Biggers, 6'6", 330. He's a senior. Started 13 games last year. He had 3 stops near the line of scrimmage against Clemson, so he is capable. 40 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, and a sack last year, according to CFB stats. It's one of my go-to opportunities there. But those stats can be a little misleading. If you're tackling guys 5 yards from the line of scrimmage, nobody cares. They didn't make enough plays in the backfield. The other guy who played a lot was Horace Lockett. He's 6'6", 340. It's not like he's a small fellow either. 14 stops, somewhat close to the line of scrimmage on the season, 3 of which came against Boston College. Okay. 25 tackles, 2.5 tackles, 4 loss. He is a redshirt sophomore. I still don't understand, like, these overall numbers. How do you have that with 2 massive guys in your middle? It's not a good sign. Now, Lockett did come on towards the end of the year in some ways. Well, more middle, to be honest. Got better and gassed out towards the end, but I just don't think they have enough depth. If you can get a few drives going in the first half, especially the first quarter, and wear them down, it's going to be really hard for Georgia Tech. The other part with this, they don't have a guy like that. They might have their thinnest spot, actually, is the weak side edge. They got a guy coming back that's pretty good, but they don't have a dude. So if you're not worried about the edge being anything more than somebody you have to use with each of your tackles one-on-one, maybe a little bump once in a while from your tight end, whether it's West or Morlock, whatever, that will really help you secure and double one of the interior guys, and you have more advantages whether you're running or passing or doing RPO. Florida State should be in pretty good shape there. If you talk about the overall concern I have with them, their linebacker group had a bunch of injuries, had issues. They can only get better. But it's going to be hard for Florida State to project, okay, we need to do this or that to isolate somebody. One of their defensive linemen coming back off injury. He's a strong side guy. I don't know where he is, and Georgia Tech may not either. Again, you're kind of guessing. So my guess for what Florida State will do, first off, just from a generic perspective, and I'll get into more detail in a second, we're just going to run our stuff. Can you stop us? Here we come. You have to find a way to take us on and go against our veteran O-line. I mean, Florida State's O-line is still one of the 5 or so most experienced in college football, even with losing a couple of guys. I mean, they've got veterans coming off the bench. Most schools would love to have somebody like Keandre coming off the bench. I mean, he could still end up starting, but they've got 7-8 guys that are worthy of starting. How many other teams have that? Maybe 5 in college football? Excuse me. It's pretty rare. I think they will beat on Georgia Tech between the tackles, or at least between the tight ends. They might run some too tight to try to force Georgia Tech to bring guys into the box, run some play action, because DJ Uiagalelei definitely has the arm strength to go deep. I could see a lot of different scenarios like that. Use the receivers for deep patterns and play action stuff, deep over the middle, etc. After they get in second 5, second 4, second 3. Use the same package with 2 tight ends. They might go 4 wide with it. All kinds of stuff. But make them commit to a package with big guys. They're not great at it. And then pick them apart, whether it's run or pass. That's kind of my overview of it. And I also think that it would be consistent. You can limit the amount of time that your defense is on the field, because I think Florida State will nickel and dime them to death. Now, I'm not saying Georgia Tech won't have a bust, excuse me, and potentially give up a big play off something basic, like a post. If anything's possible, safety's getting tired of coming down trying to tackle running backs that are getting a full head of steam at him. he might lose his responsibility and a deep shot becomes wide open. That is certainly plausible. You might score a little quicker, but obviously you take the freebies. I just think Florida State will be able to sustain drives. Prove me wrong is my theory here overall in the second part of the show. We're going to run what we do. We're going to come at you with a variety of inside runs, maybe a little outside too, to get the defensive tackle. They're big guys. Again, get them running. It's August heat, even though it's going to be in Ireland. It's still not going to be cool by any means. You're going to see guys get tired quickly. If Florida State can run outside, and maybe a little screen game too, force the D lineman for Georgia Tech to run and move a lot early in the game, it's going to beget a lot of problems for the Georgia Tech Yellow Jack. They just don't have the ability depth-wise until it's proven otherwise to get downhill, make plays, and rotate guys in and out. They just don't have that kind of depth. They're going to get wore out quick. This should be a game Florida State is up 10 points or more at halftime. The first half is really what this running game is about, because then in the second half, do what you want to do. If you want to give DJ a few more first down passes where whether it's a short pass or down the field, whatever, I have no problem with it. Now, Norvell is not against picking a team apart, even if they struggle in one capacity or another. If he thinks he's got an advantage, like one guy or one situation, he'll go at it. Remember the Pitt game last year? I thought they were going to come out and run the ball. Pittsburgh didn't have a very good situation with their offense. I mean, they were struggling, but their defense could rush the quarterback this. And I thought, they'll run it. They came out throwing and picked them apart, even without two receivers that are now being drafted in the NFL. So Florida State might surprise us a little bit, and that's okay too. But again, I would run the ball early, make them try and do something that's, shall we say, not very easy for them to do, and that's rotate guys in. They're going to be a little hesitant because they just haven't got to that point on defense. And then in the second half, play action and whatnot. So I'm going to go into some specifics in the one key player for Georgia Tech secondary and why he could be a difference in this game as well with the run game and how they do things. That is next here on Locked On Seminoles. If you are checking out Gametime, you're checking out an opportunity to get yourself some good tickets. Boston College will be the first game for the Noles. That's something you can download, Gametime on your phone, go in a couple of clicks, type in Boston College at Florida State, find a ticket that you like, and get the opportunity to go to Doak and see the game. I think this is going to be a good game, by the way. Castellanos obviously had a great game against Florida State last year, although the Noles will not take them as lightly, I think, this time around. But it'll be the opening game. Florida State coming off a great season. Check out the prices. They've got flash deals. They've got zone deals. As close as we get to the game, you'll have better opportunities to see prices and different things. And my favorite part about the Gametime app, you can click on a seat and see right from your phone where the playing field is, where you're at to the 50-yard line, where you're at to each end zone, scoreboard, etc. It's a great opportunity, and I think it's a pretty easy way to do it. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, now let's talk about something else that I find very interesting, and that's just the play calling. I always think that everybody enjoys play calling, but you also got to know who you're going against. There's one guy on their defense that gives me a little pause, not just because he's good, but because he's good and he's from Tallahassee. Harvey, cornerback for the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. They had 3 picks last year, had 30-some tackles. He's a big play guy that really got better as the season went on. You can bet that he's going to want to play against Florida State. He's from Tallahassee. How they use him might dictate a little bit, at least a little bit, of how they try to attack Florida State's run game. They might isolate him. You got to be careful on what you ask for. Maybe they get Benson or somebody on a post. Maybe he can beat him, but they'll probably stay away from Harvey and attack some of the other guys. And that's what comes into the final point here. Beating Georgia Tech, for me, if I'm the play caller, and this is just my opinion, this is how I would do it, especially in the first half. Counters, outside runs, make those defensive linemen play horizontally. They want to go north-south. Big guys don't want to break down, bend, and turn left or turn right. They don't. They want to run downhill, make a tackle play over. Trap them, double them, and fool them. Make them think. That's the first thing I would do. And if you do that, I really think by the middle of the second quarter, they could be in trouble. Off of those same things, that's where you can hit your H-back, your fullback, your tight end, short passes to the running backs with waggles and bootlegs. DJ fits that role. They did some of that stuff last year when he was with Oregon State. That offense that Jonathan Smith runs and is now at Michigan State, it's pretty basic. But those play action, I mean, either you can see where the ball's at or not. That 1 second of hesitation for the running back or the tight end or whoever the intended target is a big deal, especially when you talk about Florida State's athleticism. Guy like Morlock could have 5 catches in this game, wouldn't surprise me. Tofili, Jalen Lucas, those kinds of athletes in space, after you fool their defense and their front seven in general, you get them one-on-one outside the tackle box. That's what you want. Those 2nd down and 5 plays, that's why running the ball successfully on 1st down is really important. When you do that, screens, a little bit of draw here or there too, they're going to struggle against Florida State. That's just my opinion, but I will be shocked. The last point with this, the RPO game. Once Florida State gets to moving side to side a little bit, and Florida State certainly has the athletic advantage here. Benson with a screen, Morlock with a little hitch over the middle, in addition to a counter run from Tofili. For any of the running, I mean, they got 5 good running backs at minimum. Keziah, whoever it's in the game. Florida State should be able to screen them and all that. And then the RPO game, there might be a play where DJ thinks he's going to give it. But Georgia Tech, again, you can't have size like that and be as bad as they were on defense unless you're making mental errors and have busts. I know Santucci's a good coach, but this is his first chance at a school that at least has some tradition and all that, where there's a little expectation. But he's just not with that normal group. Like Georgia Tech is better than what they are right now. Historically, they don't have the guys. I don't think he's going to be able to run his schemes and his games as much as what he did at Duke. Doesn't have the right personnel. You're going to be able to dictate to them. The RPO game should have at least 1, if not 2, really big plays in the passing game after that running stuff gets going. And I think Florida State will have 2 or 3 plays of 40 yards or more in this game. Maybe even all of them coming in the passing game. I just think the run game will be consistently 4 to 8 yards, just chewing them up. 2nd down and 3 never goes out of style. So I'm sure Mike Norvell will take that all day. I look for Florida State to limit the number of times they get tackles for loss, and it really won't matter if they're a little bit predictable with how much they run, not the play, but how much they run on 1st down. I just don't think Georgia Tech can take them out of it unless they just flat out overload the box. The only fear, again, is Harvey or somebody getting a big play. You never know. You can't misread something, give them a freebie. If Georgia Tech doesn't get turnovers and possibly even a pick 6 or a block punt or something like that, there's a reason Vegas has Florida State 12.5 to 13-point favorite. They're a lot better. It's going to be hard. First-year defense coordinator against a really experienced group of players for Florida State, especially up front in that running back room. DJ's a 5th-year guy. I don't see how Florida State doesn't run over them. That's why I named it this podcast. Will Florida State run over Georgia Tech? It's definitive. The edge isn't small here. It is large. Florida State should run for 150 yards easily. 11 out of the 12 games last year on Georgia Tech's schedule, they gave up 169 or more yards rushing. There's another stat. They are just terrible at it until otherwise proven. Florida State should win this game going away in general, but today I wanted to go with the running game because I just thought the advantage was huge. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Please like and subscribe to this podcast. We will be back again on Monday. Thank you very much, and everybody be safe the rest of the weekend.